Entering the Mayo Experience.
That Mayo Experience. That Mayo Experience. That Mayo Experience. Experience.
Welcome to the Pat Mayo Experience, DraftKings picks and preview for the 2020 Sony Open. If you want to get into a draw for $20 DK, smash the like button for the video. Leave your DraftKings handle in the comment section. Tell me your two favorite plays below $7,000 at the Sony Open. If you want to get into a draw for 100 DraftKings dollars, subscribe to the Pat Mayo Experience audio podcast. Leave a 5-star review, DraftKings handle, and something you enjoy about this show. Boom. You're in the draw for 100 DraftKings dollars. Winners announced every Monday on The Golf Show with Geoff Feinberg. Also, for people who are interested in becoming a member at fantasynational.com, all the stats, all the tools, ownership projections, simulator, all that fun stuff. If you go to fantasynational.com/PME, get yourself 20% off. First time ever we're using discount code, so you might as well jump in. Well, the getting's good at fantasynational.com. Joining me on the line right now from thefantasygrind.com and DK Live, it's Geoff Ulrich. What's going on, my man?
Not too much. I am excited. I mean, it's always a good time of year, early January. You get to watch the tropical locations for golf and get some golf betting back in your life. So, yeah, ready to go.
Did you have Justin Thomas last week?
No, I watched the betting show with you and Feinberg last night. I was in the same situation. I didn't take Thomas. I basically took two of those guys from the 12 to like 15 to 1 range. I took Fowler and Cantlay. Those are the guys I landed on, who are right there in the top 5. They just didn't sink enough putts. Mainly Ricky didn't sink enough putts. But I bypassed Thomas for those two guys. Pretty stupid in retrospect, but it's always tough to land on a favorite who's like whatever he was, 6 to 1, 8 to 1. So
yeah, and now he's exactly the same odds this week in a field that's like 6 times the size. But if you want to get into the Pat Mayo Experience Open, the DraftKings Listeners League, the link is in the description of this video and podcast. Now, for whatever reason, there was a delay on the tournament, so I actually didn't get it until Tuesday morning. So it's updated across all the shows from Monday. It'll be in Tuesday's show. If you're looking for it, just hit that description. 3 max entry, $15 to enter, no rake. There's only 1,500 spots this week because we missed out on a day of trying to get people to enter, and they don't want to create any overlay, so hopefully we can have it by Monday morning next week, and it's like back to the 3,000 that we had. And if it fills up, you tell at DraftKings on Twitter to make the PME Open for golf bigger. See how big we can get. We ended up with like 10,000 entries for the Masters last year. Hopefully we can like ramp up and do like 5K a week. It's a lot of free money to be throwing around, rake free money. But Sony Open, Geoff, the course, Waialae, it's just over 7,000 yards. It is a par 70, and despite the fact that there are only 2 par 5s on the course, it generated the 4th most eagles of any venue on tour in 2019. It's like middle range hard to hit fairways. It doesn't really matter, but driving distance tends to be a bit mitigated here over a lot of different courses. Skill set wise, is there any skill that you think you would go to off the hop, or is everyone kind of in play here?
it is kind of a week where everyone is a little bit in play. I mean, it's a really simple course, I think, when it breaks down to it. There's not a lot of trouble on the course. So, you know, if your guy's just getting it off the tee somewhere in play, I mean, he's going to have a shot to win. It really comes down to, can he get hot with his irons and putters? So that's really what I'm looking at. I mean, you still have to be strong tee to green. Obviously, you're going to have to make some saves at some point in the week, but you know, it's a course that de-emphasizes power. It doesn't mean that like the big hitters though can't get it done, because it's still an advantage in some spots. I think that's the one thing I would say when you're looking at players. Don't necessarily bypass the big hitters. Just, you know, if your player is playing well tee to green, he's going to have a shot here if he can get hot with the putter. I think that's probably the best way to put it. It's kind of a boring course in some ways. It is a nice locale, but it's a very straightforward par 70. That's why you see guys like Kisner, Kuchar, guys who just put it in the fairway, can get hot with their putter and irons, do well here. It is what it is. experience doesn't hurt. Bermuda green's obviously a factor too.
The biggest narrative that we've heard all week is the past 6 winners have all played the week previously at the Tournament of Champions, coming into this event, and then they end up winning. But you found even more stats to go along with that to try to narrow that group down. So I think it's a fun narrative to talk about. Obviously, every single week we need to hammer down on something we can all talk and write about or point to. And some people believe in the trends, some people don't believe in the trends. I think it's something that I'm going to lean towards more this week because it just makes a lot of intuitive sense that guys that have played 4 competitive rounds in 2020 would likely have an advantage, at least out of the gate. Josh Perry, the Action Network, pointed out that if you're betting this event, you might want to bet the guys from last week now and then wait a day to jump on the guys that didn't play because presumably their first rounds will be the worst rounds that they end up having.
Yeah, and I mean, that's a good narrative too. I mean, you're right, especially if a guy you like who didn't play last week and he does start a little bit slow, you could potentially get like a really, really good number on them for round 2. So definitely, this is an event that I'm actually taking that strategy from betting. I'm not going to bet a ton of guys off the hop. I'm going to leave a little bit of room open for wiggle room. And again, we come back to that, the narratives. Yeah, players who have played last week. And, the other thing is I mentioned players have to putt well. Most of the winners here have ranked inside the top 50 at the end of the year in strokes gained putting. So it's not like terrible putters who consistently rank like 100th in strokes gained putting generally don't get it done. There's still a lot of volatility in putting. I mean, Justin Thomas is a good example. Last year he was not good strokes gained putting, but he's had hot years putting. So obviously if your player has that potential to kind of, make a jump in putting, you can still consider him. But those are a couple of the narratives. I'm not sure it's necessarily something, especially for DFS, that I think you might actually be able to take advantage of it and get some players who are going to be potentially under-owned, especially coming in off the President's Cup, which was in December. Like talking to guys like Sanjay M, Cam Smith, just in that vein, guys who didn't play last week, but still they were active in December. I think you're going to get some really good ownership percentages on those players this week, and I think they could be good DraftKings plays.
I'm curious to see how that all shakes out when it comes down to it, because I can see players like Sung Jae and Webb Simpson still drawing a considerable amount of ownership. That's why fantasynational.com/thepme for you 20% off. When like Wednesday night comes along, you click on the ownership projections tab, and you'll get a much better sense than we have on a Tuesday morning of where these guys are going to go. But it does seem like everyone's gravitating towards the same people. Most of the people that ended up playing last week, like Colin Morikawa, Justin Thomas, Corey Connors, Kevin Kisner, all these guys are going to be highly owned.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, again, it is for good reason. I mean, 3 or 4 of these players are probably going to be in contention this week. It's just the way it's broken down. It is a trend. It's a trend that can be broken at any time. But at the same time, these guys have performed, and they do have a pretty significant advantage of getting that competitive round in Hawaii, knocking off the rust, and then coming over here and playing in essentially the same conditions. And that is one thing I would keep an eye on, and it could throw some chaos into this tournament this year. It's going to be really windy, like windier than I think we've ever seen it at this event, at least that I remember, because most years they come over here, and I know everyone talks about it being Hawaii, but it really doesn't be that big a factor. We're talking about like 20-mile-per-hour gusts throughout maybe the whole tournament this week. I'm interested to see how that plays out, see if it really does make scoring difficult. And if that does come in, you could see a player like some kind of random just come in and shoot like one good round in the wind and maybe take this thing. So something to consider.
Well, that would be all signs point towards Joaquin Niemann, who was really excellent at controlling his ball flight in the wind over the weekend at Kapalua. It's funny because a lot of people try to make the case, Kapalua gets super windy, this gets super windy, and that's not, like, as you pointed out, not normally the case. Like, Kapalua is directly on the ocean. This one is protected a little bit more. We don't normally end up seeing a lot of those gusts. The one thing is that it does look like there's going to be some rain as well. And I pointed this out. This is just for DraftKings Showdown players on the weekend. And I don't know how this works now that the cut line is T65 in ties. I guess it would depend on how many guys end up sneaking through, is that you have a much better chance. This is just like an extra 2% kind of thing. But the hole 17 and hole 1 on this course are there are 2 of the 6 most difficult holes to birdie, 18 being one of the easiest, like 9 is one of the easiest. That if you get into a showdown situation where you're playing off split tees and you're playing in these showdown contests, take the guys that are starting on hole 1, not the guys that are starting on hole 10. You have a much better chance to go birdie, 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 7, 8, 9, 8, 9, 10, and 9, 10, 11 than you do wrapping around the other way. I found that was really interesting stuff. I always try to look at, but always forget, but it just kind of popped in my mind this week after I checked my notes from last year.
Yeah, no, that's a good note to have. I mean, especially you could possibly take advantage of like a wind situation too, right? Maybe it's calmer when they tee off. So, yeah, always good to take notes of things like that on courses. You mentioned there's very specific holes here where guys are going to have like really easy birdie chances. Obviously, the par fives are two of the easiest on the course. They always play, a half shot under par almost. So, yeah, definitely for Showdown, take a look at that.
Lots of eagles on these par fives as well. Yep. So actually, eagle rate is something I baked into the stat model this week. Just I think it's going to be pretty prevalent. Like if guys generally make eagles, they'll probably make a lot here.
Yeah, I mean, if you can find a guy who's a really strong par four scorer, but does is able to take advantage of those par fives with eagles, or just has a good eagle rate. I mean, I think that's a good combo this week. Obviously, the par four scoring is a big factor here as well. I mean, that's kind of another trend that I've found that most of the winners here have some kind of run of par four scoring or just been strong par four scorers over their career. Basically, it comes down to they play par 70 course as well. But again, I mentioned it's kind of a boring course. The par four is all set up the same. Guys can just come in here year after year. They know what they have to do. It's really simple for them, and the veteran players just seem to eat that up.
So past 75 rounds, par fours gained against the field. In this field, top 10, JT, Reed, Snedeker, Webb Simpson, Hideki, Harmon, Neiman, Morikawa, Sabatini, and Harry Higgs. Right after that, it's Chez Reavie and JT Poston. So that's your top 12. And if you break it down even more, there are 5 par fours from 400 to 450 and another 5 450 to 500. The ones that are longer actually do play more difficult. The other ones tend to be like super easy and easy to score on. So the best from 400 to 450 over that same range of the past 75 rounds: Reed, Webb, Neiman, Armour, Hideki, Landry, Snedeker, Munoz, Chez Reavie, and Doc Redman this week.
Yeah, no, an interesting group. I mean, a lot of players that I was already on or just looking at. I mean, I think a lot of those guys are going to make fantastic GPP plays for DraftKings. Talking about a guy like Doc Redman, a guy like Sebastian Munoz, I really like. I mean, these are players who have shown that when they get hot, they can tear up courses a little bit, especially ones like this. Munoz obviously picking up a win on a similar course, almost won on the RSM Classic there on a similar venue too. So I think that's a good stat. I think you're right. They have to take advantage of those shorter, easier par fours this week. I think most people, if your player's playing well, he's going to be able to handle the longer ones. They're not really birdie holes, but guys who can really come through, get the birdie rates up for the shorter par fours, those are guys you want to target, especially in DraftKings.
Oh, yeah, look at this. I just pulled up the wind on Wind Finder from the course. And Thursday and Friday, at least on a Tuesday, looking like it's going to be 28 mile per hour winds most of the day. On Friday, it can be 30 mile per hour winds. So there's chaos to be had. Yeah. It looks like it's going to rain on the back end of Friday. I don't know if that's going to wipe out part of the slate because it's going to rain all over the weekend too. Relatively no wind all weekend as it turns out right now. But if we got into a situation, I think if you'd want to monitor, and where lineup lock's not till noon Eastern on Thursday, so you can wake up Thursday morning and readjust if you wanted to, that if it does look like the back end of Friday gets wiped out, that you might want to target guys from that group, knowing that they're going to come back on the course on Saturday and not have to deal with any of this wind.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be a week where you can take some gambles like that with stacking. It looks like if you do get lucky and your players get round 2 pushed to Saturday, and like you said, the wind dies down, could be a huge advantage. So we'll see. Sometimes these things don't work out the way we think they do, obviously, but you're taking a risk because if they do have to play in Friday afternoon, it could be the worst conditions too, right? But I agree. The wind is going to be a factor this week. Like I said off the top, it could lead to a surprise winner, breaking of those trends. But I think more importantly, since it's a DraftKings show, it's something you got to monitor right up until lock, because we have seen when these high winds get developed and there's like a cooling off period, if you can get your wave to hit that period, you can get a big advantage when the winds get up like past 20 miles per hour.
Over $10,000 at the Sony Open. Justin Thomas comes in at $12,000. fresh off a victory a week ago, and he has won this event before. He's shot a 59 in the opening round. That is $900 more than the second most expensive player, Webb Simpson, 11-1. Reed, off his playoff loss, 10-8. Hideki in his first start, 10-5. Then you have Colin Morikawa, who was electric in the ball striking department last week, third behind Justin Thomas and Xander Schauffele. I just couldn't chip and couldn't putt, but $10,300. I love Morikawa. He's going to be one of my highest owned players of the week. I like that he's the cheapest of this group. He comes in playing really well. First timers at this course generally don't do well, but they also generally do not do well at the Tournament of Champions, and Morikawa was fine after the first few holes. So the way that you would try to construct your lineups, I'm fine with having Morikawa as my highest owned player and most expensive player in a lot of lineups, but I think it would be crazy for me not to play any Justin Thomas.
Yeah, I'm pretty much there with you, especially if you're making multiple lineups this week. Like, you're going to want some exposure to mainly Justin Thomas. I was going to say Justin Thomas and Webb Simpson, but I don't really think you should put those two in the same class. I mean, obviously we have the history, the trend with Justin Thomas having done the double in Hawaii before, but more so than that, he's just clearly the best player in this field, right? I mean, obviously top 3 in the world, coming off a win, and realistically he's got 3 wins now over his last 7 starts. And this is a player who is firing on all cylinders, obviously coming into 2020, wanting to put in a big year here. So this is his venue. This is his time of year. Obviously, he's won in the fall, early January, multiple times now in his career. 12K. There's multiple values too with Justin Thomas. That's the thing. It's easy to make lineups with him. I mean, we can probably say that most weeks, but again, on a course like this with players, in the 7K range with such good experience playing with Sony Open. Some players even just in good form too down there in that range. I really feel like Justin Thomas probably should be starting off your cash game lineups. I like Morikawa too, but again, there is the experience factor. I mean, especially for a cash game lineup, I think you're giving up too much upside with Justin Thomas not to start with him. So, maybe some people might take issue with that, going more balanced approach, but I think he's the way to go this week for that format.
Balanced approach is definitely going to be the less popular lineup construction build. I think a lot of people, maybe if we get to, I'll say the cutoff is at Neiman. So you have Kuchar at 9.9, Sungjae at 9.6, and then Neiman at 9.4. Then it's Leishman and Howell to round out the 9,000s, along with Abraham Answer at 9,000. But I think most lineups are just going to have 2 guys from Neiman and up, whether it's Thomas and Neiman, whether it's Thomas Morikawa. Maybe people go Reed and Webb Simpson. I don't know how people are going to construct it. It does appear like it's going to be Thomas, Neiman, and Morikawa as the early ownership shakes out, along with Sungjae, because who doesn't love Sungjae? But 2 guys from this range is presumably where a lot of people are going to start.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's definitely going to create a bit of a dead spot. I think there's going to be some really good GPPs in like the mid 8 to low 9K range. That's probably where I'll be targeting, trying to differentiate for sure. But I agree. I mean, taking 2 players from Neiman and above is kind of what just feels natural for cash games. And I think if you are going to go more balanced, I think going with like a Neiman Kuchar lineup gives you a lot more flexibility. It can create like a more high-end balanced lineup. I think Kuchar is a guy who could get slightly overlooked here. I mean, the guy's just got dominant course history. It's such a Matt Kuchar course that that's the one thing I would say about this range. Don't necessarily just bypass him because he's boring or he hasn't had like a top 5 over his last couple weeks here. I mean, this is Matt Kuchar territory. Hard for me to see him not putting up a top 20 this week, especially for cash games. If you're going to bypass Thomas, that is where I would go instead to save money.
You need to get this like cash game word out of your mouth. No one gives a fuck about cash games, Jeff. You kidding me?
You can win like $5 and a heads up, Pat. Come on. Yeah, I know. But GPPs. All right. That's the last time we'll say it. I'll stop being Mr. DFS non-variance guy. Let's just talk about the big money. Who do you like for targets up there then? I mean, is Reed going to go under own? That kind of feels like the feeling with me. Everyone's sharp these days. They see his nine strokes gained putting or whatever and they say, oh, I can't do that again. I mean, that's kind of the feeling with me. Reed could be the guy to swerve off of here, or to swerve to, I should say.
Yeah, Reed and Hideki are the 2 that I think they're still going to garner ownership, obviously.
Yeah.
Just because we just saw Reed perform well, and there's enough people that weren't like, oh, he had Magic Beans putting week.
Yeah, exactly.
And this is a course where he does score really well on par 4s. I can see it making a lot of intuitive sense. Hideki has been like shitty at this tournament over the years. He has 4 missed cuts and 6 starts, and no finish better than T27.
Yeah, I get the appeal with Hideki and everyone, he's like going to be the perfect tournament fit. He just puts like shit on Bermuda, and he has like a lot of his career, and it's just, you're right. I mean, he's played this event like 5 times, and every time he comes here, it's like, oh, this is going to be a good week for Hideki. It's a good course, right? It just has not been. I would much rather go up to Reed and hope for another hot putting week. Again, I just feel like, again, people don't like Patrick Reed. This cheater narrative is still flowing through the veins of everyone on Twitter. And again, everyone's sharp these days and knows like strokes gained putting is a very variable stat, and it's not something you should chase. So if you do chase it, I feel like you're going to be in the minority this week.
Well, over the past 75 rounds, if you want to chase putting, do you know who the number 1 putter is over that time frame?
In this field?
In this field, and he has, in his past 4 starts at this course, has no finish worse than T13.
I do not. I wish I knew.
It's Webb Simpson.
Okay, yes. I should have known that. I was actually looking at his putting stats last night, and I was like, wow, this guy is, he's like top 10 strokes gained putting last year, and he hadn't had like a bad putting week in forever. So not shocking. Yeah. I'm not sure what the ownership on Webb is going to be, but I would prefer, I will say this. I know I just talked about Patrick Reed. I would prefer rather going to Webb Simpson over Reed this week. I just feel like I know he hasn't played much. I know he's got the disadvantage, but we saw what he did on like basically coming in cold to the Shriners and just about shipped that tournament. Or was it the RSM? I can't remember which one, but it
was the RSM. Yeah,
it was the RSM. Okay, he almost won the RSM coming in like cold. I just feel like the guy's so dialed in right now. He's very confident with the putter. You could easily just see like a Matt Kuchar situation like we saw last year, where he just comes in, kind of dominates everything and runs away with it. So I like me some Webb Simpson if we're talking about, that range over a Reed or a Hideki.
What do you think that the difference between Morikawa and Neiman is this week? Because when I discussed it with Feinberg, we were talking about like betting one of them. I like both of them. I like Morikawa more, but in DraftKings, he's more expensive. In the betting market, he's 18-1 versus Neiman being 35-1. And this week, I would say that the ownership is going to be somewhat comparable. I would expect Neiman to be higher owned. He's popular and cheaper. That's usually a good way to go about this. I ended up betting Morikawa at 18-1. I actually just think that he's the superior player. Just because I think one is better than the other doesn't mean that I think the other guy is bad. I think Neiman is very good, and it could be a very good play this week. But do you worry that he's never played here before? I said I didn't worry about that with Morikawa. Should I be worried about that with Neiman, or is that just something for the guys in the $6,000 range? That's something to be concerned about then.
I mean, at some point, these young players are just so good. I just feel like we should probably just not worry about it. There is a trend of players, having to have played this course a couple times before winning or doing well, but I just don't really worry about it. I agree. I mean, I'm on Morikawa this week too. I wrote him up in my DraftKings article. I haven't bet him yet, but I'm heavily considering it, and I'm probably going to do it. I'm pretty much of the exact same thought of you on these two players. If you look at Morikawa's stats from last year, he didn't rank in par 4 scoring. If he did, I believe he would have ranked first. And it's a decent sample size for him too. He did play against weaker fields, but still, like, you get that kind of stats. He would have ranked like top 10 in strokes gained approach, actually better stats than Neiman in both those regards. But Neiman's no slouch either. He was top 10 in par 4 scoring. So I think this course sets up well for both these guys. And I agree. Like, if you're betting and you're just someone who chases value, you should probably bet Neiman. I like Morikawa. He's also got some local ties if you like narratives. His grandparents are from Hawaii. I like the way he played last week. He was actually like ball striking better than Neiman. I know Neiman played very well in the win, but this is a bit of a different course that really emphasizes strokes gained approach. And I think Colin Morikawa is so good in that regard. I would lean him over Neiman, even if you're giving me like 20-1 over 33-1 or whatever. I would still probably take Morikawa because, like you, I think he's a better player.
The bottom of the 9K range, which I talked about, Leishman, Howell, and Answer. People will own Howell because he's like Mr. Sony Open and generally comes inside the top 10, which is fine, but he's pretty expensive at this point, and his win equity is pretty low. That's always my one concern about him. I know a lot of people will use him in the one and done this week. Is that, like, what are the chances realistically that Charles Howell is going to win this week? Like 0.001%? Like, I would rather, well, I think that he finishes better than Leishman does. If it came down to like picking one of them, I'd probably pick Leishman because at least I know he can win.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. I mean, the one thing I might say about Howell is with all these fancy players coming in off the President's Cup, like he's squished between Neiman and Answer and people like Connors too. Again, people are sharp these days, right? You got to remember they know Corey Connors is a beast tee to green. He's got great approaches. I almost wonder if Charles Howell might just go like a little bit under the radar this week, and instead of being like 20% owned, maybe just like ends up 12% or something.
Okay, well, I mean, that's where I was more or less getting to. Like, I have him right now projected at 12% ownership, but Leishman's like 6 and Answer's 4.
Right. Oh, okay. I didn't have a feeling on Answer being that low owned. I would probably lean towards Leishman or Answer then. I'd probably Answer. But yeah, I mean, Howell is still fine at 12%. It's not like you're getting like a 30% owned player or something, which he has been at this event in the past. So from a one and done upside perspective, I completely agree. His win equity here, he's not going to win. He just doesn't win, right? So obviously coming in cold, you can also make the argument like this is a guy pushing into his 40s now too. He's kind of getting to the point where you can see there's a clear disadvantage between him and like younger players coming up. So like a Neiman. So again, I'm not going to throw out the C word again, but he does make for like a less variable play. But as far as upside goes, you're going to get lower ownership with some of those players around him. Answer and Leishman, obviously the two most obvious, just being where he is in price.
The issue I have when I'm trying to make my lineups is like the Leishman Answer on paper. We talk about the ownership. We know what their potential upside is. It makes a lot of sense to me. But then I look just above them. I still prefer Neiman. I still prefer Sung Jae. If I go below them into the $8,000 range, you hit on the magic name that everyone likes this week, Corey Connors. Everyone also likes Kevin Kisner. I like both those guys too more. So I don't know if I want to pivot off of those guys onto the lower owned. I think what I need to do is hit what you kind of mentioned a few minutes ago, this middle $8,000 range. Like, I'm good with Connors. I'm good with Kisner. I originally had Reavie circled, but no one's going to take Snedeker, who has played really well at this course over the years.
Yeah, this is the range I like for GPPs as well. Snedeker and Harman are two guys I circled as being good low and pivots in my article this week. But realistically, like, I'm not even sure how highly owned Chez Reavie is going to be. And I'll also take
I have Reavie projected right now at 16%.
Okay,
the highest owned player of this range.
Yeah, and I'm a little surprised in that because he was crap last week. But again, I guess people just, don't care about that. And for good reason. I don't think you should just cross Chez Reavie off because of last week. He's got a fantastic record here. Of course, sets up well for him. I like Snedeker and I like Harman. The player I am going to take a shot on here is Cam Smith.
Because you're a sucker.
Not my favorite player in the world, but like you really look at his history here. He hasn't shot over par here in the last 12 rounds. Like a bunch of rounds in the 60s. He's got a 64. He likes it here. Again, another player who, coming off a President's Cup, played deep into the season in Australia. Like, he played 3 weeks ago in Australia. So this is a player with form. All things considered, like you're talking about talent. There's players in here. I mean, Brennan Todd, even Chez Reavie. I think Cam Smith's upside is still pretty good. I think for a GPP play, you're going to get him at low ownership. I love the fact that he's played this course like 4 times and he's never struggled here regardless of form. So GPPs, I do like Snedeker. I do like Harman. I think Cam Smith, though, will be my pivot from this range.
Snedeker hasn't played since the FedEx Cup playoffs. Oh, my God.
Yeah, I know. That's the only thing that concerns me a little bit. But like you said, I mean, this is a veteran player, and he's obviously almost won this event one year. It's a really good setup for Snedeker. That is a factor, though, and that is kind of what led me towards saying, if I was ranking them, I'd probably go Smith, Snedeker, Harman. I might even go Harman over Snedeker, actually.
So I was initially now going to pivot onto Snedeker, but it actually does worry me that he hasn't played in like 14 weeks. So
I think it limits his upside a little bit for sure. I think you could get a solid week out of him, but you're going to get like a top 3. That to me, I think Smith is more potential for that finish.
If I told you that one guy in the $8,000 range is projected for 1% ownership, would you care who he was, and would you just take him?
Well, it's Alex Noren, right?
It is Alex Noren, yes.
I mean, look, I like me some Alex Noren. I'll defend Alex Noren just because he's a Euro, and I always think the Euros kind of get overlooked. But I don't know, man. I mean, this is a player obviously who wants to find some consistency and get himself back, like in top 50 in the world and stuff. So there's that narrative. I just don't think I'm going to go there, but he is going to be 1% owned. He's a player who can get hot with the putter at any time, so you can factor that in. He's had some good finishes in Bermuda. Obviously, almost won the Honda Classic one year. 1% ownership is really tempting, especially because it's not like Alex Noren isn't a decent player and can't pop up for a week. It's not like we're talking about, some player who's coming in off an injury, hasn't made a cut for like 3 weeks. He's still been playing okay. He's just not playing probably as high end as a guy like, say, maybe Court Connors or someone else. So I think it's worthwhile to at least take a look. If I was making 100 lineups this week, he would be at least involved, where I would get at least, maybe triple the field ownership.
So you play 3 of 100 lineups with Alex?
Exactly. I mean, that's not much of an endorsement, but
I'm playing 20 lineups this week, and now that we've talked this through a little bit, and I'm seeing that he's down to 64th in the world, but he has made 8 consecutive cuts. If the weather gets bad and windy, like, he's a good wind player, so that helps. And he was 10th at the RSM. He was 15th in Bermuda against like the world's worst field. But even going back to some of the stronger ones that he's played in, he was T15 at Alfred Dunhill, at the BMW PGA. He was T28. Like, he hasn't been like horrible like he had been before. So I don't know, maybe I'll go 3 of 20 lineups with Nor and then not worry about Snedeker and not worry about Cam Smith and just take the guy who no one has.
I think considering how low owned he's going to be, I would agree with that strategy, even though, like I said, it's not necessarily the guy I'm trying to endorse from this range. But I think when you do get a player that low owned, it can be the difference between like a good finish and a really good finish. And again, we're talking about the big money GPPs here, obviously. So Noren has been playing, I think, better than people are giving him credit for sure. So
if you had to rank your favorite plays in the 8K range, who would you go? Because I'm going to go Connors as my preferred play, who I bet to win this tournament at 45 to 1. JT Poston would be number 2 for me at 8,100. I bet him at 55 to 1. And then it'd be Kisner, who I bet at 8,700 at 50 to 1. So I like all 3 of those guys. It does seem like a lot of people are going to be on JT Poston with me, though, which worries me.
Yeah. There's a player I like better, similar price range to Poston, similar kind of coming in a little bit better and probably gonna be lower owned, but we'll talk about him later. I would rank them. I would go Cam Smith. Again, we're just going.
I have to ask you, besides being awful, what does Cam Smith like do for you in lineups?
Well, okay, first of all, coming in, I just like the fact he's coming in off of playing like he played basically a full December. I mean, played the President's Cup, played twice in Australia, and then you factor in the course history here. I mean, his course history here is really good. Like, it's not just the finishes; he's been extremely consistent.
I mean,
around this course.
let's pump the brakes a little bit. He has no finish better than T18 against a weak field every year.
Okay, but again, it's not like he's doing blow up rounds and he's getting lucky here. I mean, this is a player who's traditionally been really good with his irons, is accurate off the tee. He increased his accuracy last year. I think it's a really good venue for him. And again, coming in with just that competitive, kind of burn, whatever, that he's been with the clubs playing while these other guys have been sitting. I like that. That's why we like the guys from Hawaii last week too. So when you factor in that course experience, the setup, maybe I'm just factoring in ownership and my love for him from a GPP perspective too. But I do like him from this range. I would go probably Connors next. I like Poston as well, so I'll put him third. And then I would go with my GPP plays. Probably Harman after that. So those would be my top 4.
So looking at it, I think Harman's a logical pivot off of some of these guys, especially off Poston and Munoz, who also expect to be very highly owned. I think he is my least favorite of the potential pivots here because it doesn't appear like anyone's going to use Todd. And I just think out of obligation, knowing that the past 2 winners of the OHL also won this event, that you're going to get a low-owned Brendan Todd. Yeah, whatever. He played like crap last week. Kuchar played like crap the week before winning this week as well. So I wouldn't be too concerned about it. The fact that no one's on him, I find kind of surprising. So I'll use a little bit of him. But Andrew Putnam's the other one. He was like second here last year.
Yeah, no, Putnam's a guy. I don't know. I'm always surprised when Putnam does well. He just feels like a player who's a good putter, just like not that great off the tee, but he can get kind of hot with his approaches and wedge game. It's a good scenario. It's a good mix for this event, obviously, this course. I just like the upside with the other players around him too much. He's probably a good pivot. I like Harman a little bit better. He's just a player who's been pretty consistent over his last little bit too. He's shown with a couple wins, and he can come in here and get hot. So there's not much to separate a lot of these players that we're talking about. Obviously, there's degrees of how much they've played and stuff like that. I definitely don't mind the Putnam. I understand why someone would want to pivot to Putnam. He's just not a player I generally pivot to when he's priced up here between these types of players. I just feel like his upside is somewhere, should be a bit lower, and he's still riding like a bit of a hot streak with his putter. And I just feel like really when you're talking about these players, I think just Harman's better. That's basically what it comes down to. So I guess that's my take on Andrew Putnam.
7K range. So if you want to differentiate in the 8Ks, you can do that. There's also guys that you can do that to in the 7K. So here are the highest owned plays, all the now projected above 12% ownership players in the $7,000 range, just for your information. Brian Stewart is 13%, Munoz 16%, Knox 16%, Griot, Sabatini, and Palmer all 12%, Lanto Griffin 18%, Vaughn Taylor 11%, Kyle Stanley 15%. So those are the ones tracking in double digits right now. After learning that information, and again, this can always change the later that we get into the week. That's just how it's shaping up right now. But would any of those numbers worry you? Because I like Lanto, but if Lanto is going to be the third highest owned guy in the tournament, I might go a different direction.
That would be the player that worries me the most as well. Again, nothing against Lanto Griffin. He's been playing amazing. It's just, yeah, I mean, 18%, it is getting up there to the point where this field is deep enough and there's players around him. I would probably rather like eat 11% on Vaughn Taylor, who's coming in off a really nice fall season and is a really strong putter, to the point where you could see like a top 10 putting week from him for sure, which is kind of what you need to get it done around here. And realistically, I mean, even under Lanto, I mean, you know, Pat Perez, your boy Shugo there, I mean, who's coming in with some amazing hot fire Asian Tour form. Even Keegan Bradley. These guys are going to be really low owned. And I mean, are they really like worse than Lanto? I don't know. So 18%, I would get off Lanto. I do like Munoz. That I'm fine with eating a little bit of chalk on Munoz this week. I think, again, I was talking about pivoting off of Poston. Realistically, if they're going to be the same percentage, I would prefer Munoz. He's played really well at setups like this in the past. Obviously, almost won the RSM. He's done well at bouncing back too. He didn't have the greatest week last week in Maui, but finished strong. I really like Munoz this week.
So I would prefer, I mean, if it came down between Lanto and Munoz and I had to fade one of their ownerships, I would fade Munoz. I prefer Lanto, and he's cheaper, which is nice because I don't want to pivot off of JT Poston. I really like JT Poston this week. He's going to be one of my highest owned guys. But the move here could be, if you wanted to get off Lanto and still play the narrative of last week, there's a bunch of guys who played last week who no one's using because they played poorly last week, but they're all like good players. Like Palmer, yes, he's going to be in double digits. I do like him. Kevin Na is going to be like 4% owned. He's $7,500 and one of the best players in this field. He was just horrendous last week, but $7,500, low ownership, and then just drop right around him. Fratelli is $7,700, 2% ownership. Yes, he was god-awful last week, but let's not forget, some of these guys, once they're out of it at the Tournament of Champions, they're like, whatever, I'm here on vacation.
Yeah. I don't know about Kevin Na. It does worry me a little bit, but you're exactly right. I mean, once some of these guys start with like a poor first round, and also like, let's not forget, it was windy last week. So it's not like it was the conditions were making it easy for these guys to turn things around, right? Like once they started poorly, they were probably just, saying, I'm not exactly don't have the effort here to turn things around. So Na is one of those players who he'll do his own thing, right? So if he feels like just packing it in for a week, Kevin Na is going to pack it in for the week. I agree. He's going to be low, and I would even say 4% ownership sounds like a little bit high to me, considering what he put up last week. I don't think a lot of people are going to have the bravery to click on that. Fratelli, I'm okay fading Fratelli even at low ownership, just because he's a player who feels like you're going to see it coming with Dylan Fratelli. He's going to start just popping up like top 10 strokes gained tee to green every week. I know he did get the benefit of a start last week, but that's not really enough for me to just say, oh, he's going to make for a fantastic tournament pivot. I would prefer guys a little bit lower in salary than that. Like I think Daniel Berger is a player you could even go to, or Russell Henley at 7,100. I'd rather take a shot with those guys who who have similar upside, maybe aren't as consistent, but I'm okay fading Fratelli at 7,700.
You'd rather go back to the same guys that cost you money every week?
Me bet Russell Henley? No.
I mean, you want to throw Grillo into this too?
Grillo, I was surprised to hear. I guess people just cannot get off of Grillo. Look, it's hard for me to make an argument against Grillo. I mean, the guy ranked top 5 in strokes gained approach last year. He's so consistent off the tee. Like, we're obviously these are the stats we want to look at in consistency. And the guy's 7,600 at a course where you want straight hitters off the tee and guys who can just smoke it with their irons. I don't know, man. I mean, it's just that 1 week Grillo is going to figure out how to putt again, and like everyone who just keeps chasing him is going to get paid off. He's probably fine for cash. I shouldn't say cash games for you. You're going to yell at me, but he's probably a fine play. I just don't really know what his upside is in an event where you have to get to 20 under and, make all your putts inside 10 feet. So take that into consideration before you roster him.
Well, the guy that didn't even come up in this conversation is right around Fratelli. Like, if you didn't want to use Fratelli, Carlos Ortiz was second at the OHL. He was fourth the week before that. This is a primo event for him. Like, he could play really well. He does really well in Birdie Fest. This is going to be a Birdie Fest. He played in one of the most extreme wind conditions at the Houston Open. I think it was like 2014, 2015. And he was the only player to come out of his wave who ended up inside the top 10 of the tournament. Like, the guy's a good talent. And I think that we're all just kind of, because Lonto and Munoz and all those guys ended up winning during the swing season, we forget that Ortiz was the other guy in that group. He just didn't win. He just came inside the top 10 a bunch.
Yeah, I was going to bring up Ortiz. I'm glad you brought him up because it flew off my mind. I was going to bring up Ortiz in this range. Again, we're talking about all these potential pivots. I feel like Ortiz is probably the best pivot. I mean, he's kind of like Grillo in the sense he's very consistent with his irons and off the tee when he gets going, but he can actually sink some putts. And this is a player who won the Corn Ferry Tour like money list. He was coming in like off a Sanjay Im kind of year, and he was touted up that highly at one point, and he just fell off the earth for a year or so, and it happens to guys. I mean, Lonzo Griffin, kind of the same thing. He just had a really bad year his first year on tour, fell off, and now he's back to being consistent. Ortiz is in the same vein. He just hasn't won yet, like you said. This is a player with experience at this course too. I really like him as a tournament pivot here. If people are going to play Grillo, that's fine. Like I said, Grillo's a good player. I think Ortiz's upside is way better this week to the point where, like, I would be absolutely fine taking multiple shares and being like double the field on Ortiz, whatever his ownership's going to be.
What do you do with my guy, Papashugo? So he's in like the low sevens. He's a top 35 player in the world by the world rankings. I don't know how much we're buying that. But his recent form is 3rd, 39th, 1st, 36th, 2nd, 59th, 12th, 1st, 7th, 1st.
I'm kind of interested. I mean, I usually make fun of you for these type of plays, although they seem to work out for you all the time. But I'm kind of interested. This is a very simple course. This isn't a course like they're not playing Torrey Pines here, where he's going to have to come in and compete with all these guys hitting 350-yard drives off the tee. He's played here before. He actually performed okay here last year. Again, we're talking about like guys who've been competitive over the last 3 months. He's been playing every week, and he's been winning. And yeah, he's dusting weaker fields. I get it. But like this setup, if anything, probably mimics a lot of what he's seeing week to week over in his regular tour. It's not that far a hop from him to where his homeland is. So I like it. I think he's a good tournament play. I mean, I mentioned Henley and Berger, and yeah, those guys are obviously better players in my mind in long run, but it's not like Berger has been playing that well either, or striking his irons that consistently. I think Imahara is a good tournament pivot. There's not a ton of guys I'm in love with in this range either. So in my opinion, whoever you're taking a shot on between like 74, 7,000 range, you're taking risk. Why not go with the guy who's built himself up high in the world rankings and been playing like a lot coming into this week? This is a big week for him in a lot of ways. And I think it's worthy of like getting him into your GPP lineups.
He's made the cut here the past 2 years too. He's 54th and 33rd. Nothing great by any means, but it's something to at least build on. He has experience at this course. The other guy I was going to mention from down here is Pat Perez, who is top 10 at the OHL. He has top 10s in 2 of his past 4 starts. The 2 that he did not perform well at were the tough ones over in Asia against the good players. Well, now he's back at like a regular tournament where there are like 3 good players. So that's more like a Pat Perez style venue. So I think those 2 guys, like they have a combined projected ownership of 3%. That, 2 shots at a 20 on each of them. And you're massively overweight to the field. And I think that Perez obviously has more upside. Shugo might actually be safer, which is kind of weird. But the big name down here, who's carrying the most ownership of all of them, is Kyle Stanley at $7,000. I don't think he's ever missed a cut at this tournament, which is kind of weird.
No,
but
yeah, he does.
But he's terrifying. He is just absolutely terrifying. Yeah,
I agree. He is terrifying just because of how poorly Kyle Stanley can putt. I know his course history here is a little surprising. With it just being like such a heavy second shot course where he doesn't have to obviously like power off the tee is de-emphasized. It's a good setup for Kyle Stanley. He's obviously putted well here in the past to the fact where he has, basically made the cut in every start, had some good solid finishes. I'm a little surprised to hear he's going to be like the most popular player. Although, like I said, this whole range feels like landmines, right? So it feels like, the guys who land on the right player, whether it's Perez or Imahara or Henley, whatever, are going to have good week or the potentially like land on a really good GPP play. So I'm not really interested in Kyle Stanley. His past form coming in over the fall wasn't really that great. I get that the course history here is, but you look at guys like Berger, Henley, Perez, and they all have great course histories too. So I'm not sure what makes Kyle Stanley so much better from that regard. I guess he's a little bit cheaper. Maybe that's why.
I think it's that he's cheaper. And if you just go look at what he's been doing even over the swing seasons, that he's been gaining a bunch of strokes off the tee and even more through approach. The ball striking has really been consistent and excellent. But as it goes with Kyle Stanley is that he puts himself out of every tournament.
Yeah. I agree. And I'm just not sure what Kyle Stanley's upside is this week. So, again, Kyle Stanley guy, I feel like too, you can kind of see it coming with him. He'll start to stink a few more putts, get a little more confidence. Again, if he's going to be anything chalky, I'm fine taking a shot on one of those other players we mentioned a little bit higher or someone a little bit lower as well. There's a couple guys definitely in the high 6K range I like.
Well, let's go into the 6K range then. I'll tell you the guys that I have stars next to, at least at this point. I'm not committing to playing them yet. Well, a few of them I'm committing to playing for sure. But the guys on my short list right now, maybe I can add some names or subtract some names from that list. Graham McDowell, Nate Lashley, Tyler Duncan, Zingzhu Zhang, Mark Hubba Hubbard, Scott Harrington, Andrew Landry. Those are the guys. And it seems like everyone's using Doc Redmond from down here, in case people were wondering.
Yeah. I mean, Redmond, I like Redmond. I think at 6,600, you're getting a really solid player. Obviously, he played well in the fall. It's his first time coming through. But, I mean, again, I feel like he's a solid enough player. You shouldn't worry too much about that.
Outside of Tyler Duncan, I have projected at 7%. And I have Doc Redmond projected at close to 14%. And those are the 2 highest. So he's almost double the next closest guy. If you look at the Fantasy National Simulator, it loves him. The stats, it loves him. But we still know that the inherent risk with a lot of these 6K guys, that it's always just better to avoid the chalk. And sometimes it's hard to do. Sometimes you don't want to. But over the course of the entire season of playing DraftKings golf, just fade these guys.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I'm not shocked to hear that you guys haven't projected that high. That's pretty much what I would have expected. Obviously, I'll still say I like him because I obviously at 6,600, you got to like a player like that coming in with stats that are obviously putting him high in people's models. But I agree from tournaments, we're talking trying to find those low owned, like kind of sleepers that are going to pop your lineup. I would probably rather take a shot with Graham McDowell. He hit the ball well last week. It's a great course for him. Player who did not putt well last week. But again, it's kind of the same thing as the Kevin Na argument. I mean, Graham McDowell's a veteran. Like he's just a player who will do his own thing. He probably started the tournament off a little bit shaky, came in and said, I have no shot in this wind to catch up to like Justin Thomas. I'm just going to take it easy and enjoy Hawaii. I'm sure he's coming into this event a little bit more focused, probably realizes the venue change gives him a lot better shot. I think he's definitely in play this week. Definitely like a poor man's Matt Kuchar in a lot of ways at 6,800. I definitely would not mind taking a shot at him. Also, DJ Trahan, a guy who played well in the fall, putted really well on the Bermuda grass at RSM. Good setup for him, I think. He's a good ball striker, really solid tee to green, 6,700. I don't mind that. And I like Hubbard. I'm with you. Those are three guys definitely GPPs I'm looking at.
Yeah, so Hubbard, Harrington, McDowell are really where I'm going to. Maybe I'll back off of Tower Duncan just a little bit if he's going to be like the second highest owned guy. The thing is, it's not that you need to look for guys that are low owned in the 6,000s. It's that outside of Redmond and Tower Duncan, everyone is low owned in the 6,000s. So that you can just, if anything is even close, be like, oh, I'll take the guy who's 3,000% less owned in these giant tournaments. And if he hits, and even if you have Doc Redmond rated marginally better, then let's say, I mean, I really like Scott Harrington this week, and maybe he garners some ownership. So let's say Mark Hubbard, who will not, and should, because he's been really good over the swing season, especially in the approach department and these birdie fests where you really want to go. Like, even if you have Redmond rated 1% higher in terms of what your projections might be or how you feel about them, but one guy's going to be 14%, the other guy's going to be 2%, just take the 2% guy. It's a really good tiebreaker. Yeah,
for sure. I agree. And that is, it's a good point. Like, other than maybe like one chalk play per week, usually the 6K range, you don't have to worry about ownership. You can still play Doc Redmond too. Like if you're doing like, you're going like Webb and Justin Thomas or something to start your lineup, you can take Doc Redmond and just take two other 6K guys. You're going to have really low owned players. So, one other name I'd throw in the 6K range, Fabian Gomez played well in the fall, obviously past winner here, sets up well for this course. If he's putting well, can definitely pay off there. So I like his upside as a GPP pivot too.
Any love for Chris Kirk, who either misses the cut or does really well at this tournament?
Chris Kirk is still making his way back. What is his price? I forget.
6,700.
Yeah.
Where's my guy Cameron Tringali? Why isn't he here?
I mean, he played a lot in the fall. Oh, he played in Australia too. He's probably taking a break, I guess. So he's coming off a strong. Yeah, this would have been a good event for Tringali for sure. Although he probably would have ended up being like 6,700, like 20% owned. So maybe it's good he's not here. Kirk is interesting. I mean, you're taking obviously if you're just emphasizing course history. If you're taking Chris Kirk, he's a guy who obviously coming off the break for personal reasons. Played twice in the fall, played okay in one start and then missed the cut. I mean, just from a pure talent perspective, what he's done in his career, he probably deserves to be higher ranked in the price. But again, I'm fine waiting and see. I like some of these other names down here a little bit too much to just take a shot on Chris Kirk this week.
Yeah, some of the other ones, the stats inside the top 30 overall in terms of the stat modeling I've done over the past 75 rounds. Harrington rates out the best, so I'm going to use him. I also bet him with a very small bet in a top 5 each way at 275 to 1. Cameron Percy would be next, then Doc Redmond, then Troy Merritt, and there was one other like jabroni who ended up popping up. Oh, it was Graham Dillette. And Seb Straka are the other two. Remember we just used Seb Straka every week and it was fantastic. Now he's 6,200 and no one's using him. And your guy Christoph Ventura, you took him in our draft.
Yeah, Pat. Let's not bring up my draft at this point. I have nightmares about some of the guys I picked. I don't know what I was thinking. Ventura is interesting. He's one thing I'll say for a young player. He's a very good putter. So he could show up as like a first round leader. I'm going to wait and see if he can get the rest of his game going before I start touting him on these shows and stuff. I'll throw out Matt Every as a name to consider. He was playing well before he got the old, cannabis see you later there for 3 months, the old 3-month vacation. But he's back. This is a really good setup for Matt Every, the Bermuda Matt Every. Definitely. Look, if I'm going to give any advice for this week, bet Matt Every first round leader at whatever he is each way.
I mean, he's got to be one of the lowest. I'm going to look that up right now.
Oh, he's probably like 0.1.
Good advice. Let me see. First round leader, 175 to 1 first round leader. Yeah, I can do that for sure. Let's do that right now as we speak. Boom.
Don't get your espresso this week, people. Just bet Matt Every first round leader. Like it's not going to cost you much.
Yeah, it doesn't. I'll do a $4 each way on him. So $4 to the 175 and $4 for the top 5 as first round leader. That $8 could turn into 883, Jeff.
I mean, look, Matt Every's got a fantastic record as first rounds leaders too. He's done it multiple times. Done it at Hilton Head. He's done it at Wyndham. Paid off for me big at Wyndham one year, first round leader. So, look, yeah, could definitely do it. Should have some motivation. They took away his medication. So,
yeah, he's gonna have to go play on the Mackenzie Tour in Canada.
Yeah,
Just be like, fuck this. I gotta get high before every round, or I'm no good. I have a couple friends who do exactly the same strategy when they go golfing.
yeah. Oh, I've been there. Trust me.
Any love? Like, do we like Dillette at all? Like, when can we consider him back, or do we just have to wait for it to happen?
The thing with Graham Dillette is, and here's my argument, I guess, against just waiting. His game is tee to green, right? So if his ball striking isn't there, is Graham Dillette going to save you with his putter every week? Answer is no. I would just wait to see him some good ball striking stats. It'll probably too pop up. It's kind of like when Kevin Chappell came back. He popped up with like that one incredibly hot fire round. Then he struggled for a bit. I would wait to see a little bit of consistency. Look, from a talent perspective, sure, 6,100. I get if you just want to put him in there and just go from that perspective. But I would wait. There's still some good young players down here in this range. Like, I mean, again, we mentioned Ventura, players like every who played in the fall. I would rather take shots with him than Graham Dillette, who it's hard for these guys to put together 4 rounds when they're coming off injury. And Kevin Chappell kind of showed that. I would really wait on a player like Graham Dillette.
Do we put any merit into Sam Burns, who wasn't like not great since he returned from the injury when he broke his ankle, but like he is like Mr. Putting on Bermuda?
Yeah. I forgot to look up Sam Burns this week because I know he was coming off the injury.
So miscut, 45th, miscut. Right. Those are his past 5 starts. However, per round, he gains 0 strokes, no positive, no negative. He's even on bent grass. He gains 0.15 per round on POA, and per round on Bermuda gains 0.7 strokes per round on Bermuda grass. That is outrageous.
Yeah, and again, we're talking who we want to take a shot on here. I would prefer a guy like Burns just for those reasons, like you said. I mean, his putting stats, he's just a good putter, which he's shown over his career. But obviously, it's been emphasized on Bermuda greens. I'm not exactly sure the extent of his injury. It was kind of a little nasty, fluke thing that had happened to him. Obviously affected his game, but he's had time like Dillette. I would definitely rather take a shot on him. Although again, I'll say it again. I don't think you have to do that in this field. I'm just looking like Troy Merritt at 6,500. I would rather just click Troy Merritt's name, who's also a fantastic putter, than take a shot on a player who's coming back from injury. But Burns, to me, definitely better upside at a venue like this where he could just come in, maybe not even have to hit it well off the tee and still put up like a top 20 because of how well he putts.
So I figured out my Doc Redman problem. Just like how I don't want to use Matt Every in my DraftKings lineup, and I'm going to be fading Doc Redman, I'll also just bet Doc Redman first round leader and see how that goes.
I like that strategy too. I mean, again, I'm generally looking to fade. I'm like you. I'm generally looking to fade the heavy chalk from, the 7K to 6K range guys. They're just obviously more volatile players. But if you can get a piece of them, like with a big top 20 bet or a first round leader or something, yeah, sure, why not?
So the first round leader, since we've been doing this, and I just opened up the page, I was like, oh, I can bet all these guys. This is great. So I'm going to get off the page here very soon. But I did the first round leader in each ways with, let's see here, Doc Redman, Scott Harrington, Andrew Landry, and Matt Every. I have those 4 guys locked in. That's 150, 160, 175, and 175. That's not bad for the moment. We'll see where else I end up.
I think I'm going to add Landry and Redman to my list as well. I was already looking at Landry, but I like it. He's a guy who's, 4 rounds. It's hard for him to put up 4 consistent rounds, but he's definitely capable of that one burner in the first round too. He's a good first round leader bet.
Herman is 200 to 1. As someone who's won a lot of money on Jim Herman, first round leader in the past, he played well for like 3 rounds at the Tournament of Champions. I didn't even see his name come up here. How much is Jim Herman? He's 6,200? You kidding me?
Yeah. I almost bet him outright actually when I saw his odds for this week, just because again, I'm the one who brought up the narrative on Twitter of guys who played last week, and Jim Herman's sitting out there like 500 to 1. Guys won twice on tour at like similar style courses too.
That's the thing. Like when he does well at courses, it's this kind of course.
Yeah, no, it's he gets fire with his putter and his irons, right? And they're both Bermuda greens as wins. So yeah, I get probably again a guy I would maybe I'm not going to go the DraftKings route, but I'll probably maybe try and just get a little touch of money. Either it's the outright at like an insane price or just the first round leader. I agree. Again, another player. I didn't have room on my list for him here, but I kind of wanted to just mention him at the end.
He's made 4 straight cuts. He has a top 10 at the Sony Open in 2017, made 4 of his past 5 cuts at this event. This guy, like, I didn't realize how bad Jim Herman is around the greens. Like, he is the worst player. Like, we thought, like, Dillette is bad, or, like, what is it with Canadian players, by the way? Like, Corey Connors also sucks around the green. Like, Hadwin is the only good one, like, from 2 feet off the green.
And Hadwin is a little sketchy at times, too. Like, he can go through his bad patch. I've seen him blast chips, like, 50 feet past. I think it comes down to just that these guys can't practice their short games year round, right? Like they're probably hitting balls indoors for three months of the year. And I know,
but okay, say let's not pretend that these guys are living in Moose Jaw past the time that they're 17.
When they were younger, right? Like, I mean, their skill sets probably in that range. They just didn't have as much time to work on it. They're probably ball striking more when they were 12 or 14. And I don't know. I'm just throwing things out, but it probably does have a little bit of something to do with it. A lot of these guys with fancy hands around the green, like Tiger, they grew up in spots where they're just around the course all the time. So that's my take on it. But you're right. The Canadians tend to be the supreme ball strikers just probably because they're in their basements hitting irons all year.
Or they're playing hockey all winter, and like hockey players tend to be the best golfers. Like if you go from like at other sports who are good at golf, like you don't notice because there are no like famous hockey players enough. Like I don't know if. Remember when Alex Ovechkin had that hole-in-one? Swear to God. But, like, if Steph Curry decides he wants to go play golf, it's a big deal because he's Steph Curry. He is a popular player. If Tony Romo wants to go do it, was a starting quarterback in the NFL. He can go try to qualify for the U.S. Open. It's a story. Like, no one in the States cares about any of these, like, jabroni hockey players who are, like, good at golf.
Yeah, no.
It's not making headlines, put it that way.
No, there's no cameras falling around like Nate McKinnon in the offseason playing golf or anything like that. They just assume these guys are playing golf. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean it's a similar motion. It's the right body type. Like was it Dan Quinn who used to play for the I think he played for the Penguins in like the early 90s, like with Lemieux and like Kevin Stevens and Jagger. He ended up being like Ernie Els' caddy at one point.
Oh, really? I never heard that story.
Yeah, I think he qualified for the senior tour and ended up being Els' caddy. Like, they're good pals.
No, yeah, and that's the thing with some of these hockey players. Like, they're legit good players, some of them. I'm not sure like what percentage of them ever chased a pro career, but I mean, just some of them going out. I mean, some of these guys can just go out and shoot, scratch golfers just even just playing the off season. So it is a transferable skill. Probably maybe has something to do with it as well, but
it's a transferable skill, and the seasons line up perfectly. Like when hockey ends, it's officially golf season in Canada, and when golf season ends, it's officially hockey season. It's like what you do. It's like how Canadians for ages used to be like pretty decent baseball players because the seasons matched up perfectly with hockey.
Right. Yeah. I mean, hockey players as a group of athletes probably the best golfers. Just from that perspective. So. I guess we got that going for us.
Well, there's also the caveat of rich sport.
Yes, both are very expensive to play. That is true.
So you can afford to play hockey. You can probably afford to play some golf too.
My kids are going to be runners, so.
Yeah, they're going to be. They're not going to be what? They're not going to be polo players.
No.
Well, it's funny. Like I was talking to my wife, and she was like, "What sport should we put on?" I was like, "I don't know, all of them, like besides hockey, and see how that goes." There's a good advantage of being like, because we're both in Canada, so not playing hockey. Like one, I can't stand hockey, and I played it for like 15 years, and realistically, I don't want to have to wake up at like 5 a.m. and go to some shitty rink that has no heating in it. Like, I'll stick to the sports that are just a bit easier. I mean, cheaper for one thing, but like the ability to excel at not hockey in Canada, if you're any like sort of good as an athlete, is so high just because all the good athletes play hockey.
No, that's true. Like you have way less competition. I mean, if you can, put out a niche in like fencing or something like that, you're going to be the top fencer in the world. Or even swimming, right? Like again, there's just not that many high-end swimmers going out there in Canada. So things like that for sure. I admit, like I'm actually getting ready to teach my kids how to skate, and I'm not looking forward to it. I got to either go to the cold rink or go outside and freeze to death on like a dinky little outdoor rink. So it's going to be fun for them, but not so fun for me.
It's funny. You have to. You don't have to, but I have a couple friends who can't skate, and it's the weirdest thing in the world because everyone else knows how to do it like well.
Yeah, I mean, I have not skated in a while, but like,
you pick it right up. I went like 8 years without putting on a pair of skates. You put it on, you do like one lap, you're like, oh yeah, I know how to do this. Don't worry.
Yeah, exactly.
Just make sure that the blades are sharp because you don't want to be out there with like rusty blades or dull blades and like try to turn and then you just wipe out.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. It is one of those things in Canada. If you don't know how to skate, most people will like keep that a secret. Like it's something you lock away. And if the skating ever comes up, like I've had friends, they just make excuses, and I know they don't know how to skate. So yeah, it is one of those things. It's like a stigma in Canada. So
I would say that in Canada, more people know how to skate than swim.
Absolutely, I actually know a lot of people who are like either don't know how to swim or like barely know how to swim. It's a little scary. So.
Yeah, so I got to teach. I'm writing this down. I showed you. I had the video. My son walked for the first time last night. Now he just like runs. It's like, oh my god. So I got to get skating, swimming, for socialization reasons. Teach him how to do those two things, and then I'll get a member. I'll move somewhere cheap and get a membership to a country club. He can learn how to play tennis and golf.
Yeah. I don't know if golf. I'll take my kids to the driving range one day. We'll see. But golf is a time-consuming thing too. I love it. And the problem with Canada is too.
Well, you also live in the Arctic, so that doesn't help.
No, it does not help. But no, maybe one day I'll put a indoor driving range in or something.
See, golf is a good one because it's something you can go do with your like. I played golf with my he probably taught me how to play golf when I was like 7 or 8, and I just played golf with my dad. If like you're playing baseball or you're playing hockey or basketball, it's like your parents bring you to do it and then like watch you struggle for an hour and then you go home. At least with golf, like you can go do it too.
That's a good point. I mean, that's actually a really good point. I never really thought about that, but I did. Like my dad was the same thing. Took me to the driving range and then we'd go play like once a week or something like that in the summer. So from that perspective, it is actually a way better sport to teach your kids because you can actually do it with them, not be bored to death, and like teach them as you go. So.
Yeah, and it's something that you can like once you get past the point of like I played golf with my dad last summer, and probably the first time I had played golf with him in like 15 years or so, or like since basically I started since I got my license. So since I was 16, it was the first time I just went and played golf on my own or just stopped playing golf. But he can still golf, and like I still golf. So it's something that I was able to do when I was a little kid with him, and now I can do as an adult when he's getting older too. So I think it really works out well that day. Number one sport to teach your kids, golf. Just don't be poor.
Yeah, just don't be like me and just pick losing lineups every week. Just actually pick good lineups. You'll be fine.
Yeah, become a member of FantasyNational.com, FantasyNational.com/the-PME for a discount. Use it better than Jeff and I do, and boom, win the money, teach your kids golf, set for life.
There you go.
I can hear your kids in the background.
Yes, they're getting a little antsy. My wife is out there, but we're good.
All right, let's wrap it up then, Jeff. Where can everyone find your work and your picks?
Oh, yes, where they can find it. Definitely check out the DK Live app. Obviously, we got the Sweat Show. It's on at 10 Eastern now on the interwebs.
I like that you know that.
Well, we just switched times, so I had to remember. We went from afternoon, evening to mornings, so it's 10 Eastern now. So definitely check that out. And obviously, the DK Playbook. That's where you find my weekly cheat sheet. Really, just follow me on Twitter at the Fantasy Grind. I'll have some betting stuff up on the fantasygrind.com as we transition out of football, and that doesn't take up half my life. So definitely just follow me on the interwebs on Twitter. You'll get all the good stuff.
You can find my cheat sheet and my article up on DK Playbook as well, along with old Transition and Jeff over there. You can also follow me on Twitter at the PME, Facebook, and Instagram. My betting cheat sheet will be out on my Facebook page Wednesday afternoon. That'll have the whole collection of bets, top 20s, whatever I end up deciding to do, plus the one and dones for the week from me, Jeff, and the Cust. I'll be back tomorrow with the NFL Pick Show with Tim and Jeff, so stay tuned for that. Until then, I'm Pat Mayo. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.
Pat Mayo Experience! Experience!